All right, it is time for the currently reading challenge wrap up. No weekly. It is the whole shebang. Hey everyone, it is Shannon and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be me wrapping up and reflecting on my currently reading challenge fall edition 2022, which was 8 weeks of working on the books on my currently reading. Every week I picked 5 titles, some fiction, some nonfiction, and the goal was to read 75 pages a day, 5 days out of the week, for a grand total of 375 pages a week. Now, at the beginning of the challenge, I didn't say this, but my goal was to do this for 8 weeks because that ends up being a total of 3,000 pages. And I ended up doing that sort of. I did a dress rehearsal week and then I did 7 weeks, and then that was all I was able to do. So it ended up being 8 weeks. That dress rehearsal week, I think I only read 4 books, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's close enough, and I'm counting it. It's my challenge. I'm counting it. So the goal was 375 pages a week. Let's take a look and see how things went. I am going to go through the numbers. I am going to share some realizations and challenges and surprises, and then see where it all ended up. So in the dress rehearsal week, I read 352 pages and finished the title of Let's Talk About Love by Kann. Oh, sorry, that's really hard to see. We have lost the light. It's not quite dark yet, but it is raining because of the time change. It's feeling later than it is. Anyway, so I finished Let's Talk About Love in that first week. So yeah, started things off strong in the dress rehearsal. In week number 2, I read 333 pages and finished The Female Man. Now, so for both those 2 weeks, I didn't hit the 375 pages, but both weeks I also finished the title. So, we'll take the wins where we can find them. In week number 2, I read 513 pages, so I hit my goal, and I also finished Heating Up for the Holidays, which is a Harlequin Blaze collection of 3 novellas. And so I finished 2 romances. Is anyone counting? Am I counting? Are you counting? You don't need to count. You don't need to count. I will do the math. I've already done the math, actually. No in-math calculations for this video. In week number 3, I read 532 pages and finished The Beat by Alex Garland. This was one of the huge successes of the challenge. This was a book that I think I had read like 16 pages before the May round of this went, and it didn't come up in May. I didn't touch it through the summer because I was working on library books I was reading from the library, but it came up 3 times in a row. Like I think 1 week 0, week 1, and then a week off, and then a 3rd week, and then I was like, okay, let's do it. I ended up enjoying it. Enjoying is a bit strong. I didn't dislike it. I don't like double negatives. I'm still processing it, obviously, and I still have to see the movie, so I'm looking forward to that. But I am thrilled, like just genuinely thrilled that I ended up finishing that, and that really helped me understand that I actually can finish a 400-page title in 3 weeks, which I wasn't sure if I could do that. Not every 400-page book is, reads at the same pace or anything like that, but it was a big win. It was a big win. Okay, where were we? So week number 4, I read 552 pages, and I finished The Girl Who Played with Fire by Stieg Larsson. This is one of the ones that I just motored. I did speed read some of it, but not as much as I expected. I talked about it more in my wrap up for that week. I didn't enjoy it, but I did want to finish it. I have decided to DNF the series. I don't plan on rewatching the movies. The original trilogy is brilliant, but it's just so harsh, and I'm just like, at the time, when this came out, or when the films originally came out, that's when I heard about the series. I was more I would watch films with harsher content, and now I'm just not interested. So it's one of the oldest books on my Goodreads TBR. It is very reflective of what I was interested in at the time, which is 2010. It is not as reflective as what I'm interested in now. Therefore, I am DNFing the series, but I finished the title and I feel just so super awesome about it. I did also finish that week as a bonus read. I did finish Blood Magic by Nora Roberts, which completes a series, the Cousins O'Dwyer series, and I'm thrilled about this. It came up, I think, twice in the May round of the Currently Reading Challenge, and I didn't finish it, didn't read it throughout the summer, and so I was really happy to finish it. I enjoyed it. It's a longer, slower read than I expected, and I think Nora Roberts is like that for me, which is just the truth. It doesn't have to have, I was going to say which I don't like or is too bad. It doesn't need a value judgment. It's just the truth. And so, yeah, but I finished it. I am thrilled. I enjoyed it. It's a paranormal romance with some historical ties, family legacy pieces, and just, really, it is paranormal romance in that it follows a different couple, but it does feel a bit more like urban fantasy for some things. But yeah, anyway, so that was awesome. And then in week 5, I read 482 pages, so definitely. And now we're into November, and I switched things up and decided to read more nonfiction than fiction, and that was, I would have to say, very successful, because I ended up finishing One Game at a Time by Hanarani Singh. This is my journey from small town Alberta to hockey's biggest stage, a nonfiction memoir by a sports broadcaster. And I also finished A History of Reading by Alberto Manguel. These were my first nonfiction finishes for this round of the challenge. Both happened in November. I think it's the second or third time they ended up being picked, but for Nonfiction November, it was nice to start finishing some nonfiction titles. In week 6, I ended up reading 392 pages. I lost one. Oh, sorry. In week 5, I also finished The Progress of Love by Alice Munro, which is a collection of short stories. I had 200 pages to read of this, and I read them all. I can't quite believe that. And then in week 6, I read 392 pages, and I finished Essential Art History by Paul Duro and Michael Greenhalgh, which came out both in the May and in the fall editions of this challenge. And I also finished The Structure for Scientific Revolution by Thomas Kuhn, which was these are both nonfiction. So again, Nonfiction November just totally rocked it. And both of these were slow reads, and this was one of the most challenging reads that I read throughout this edition, as well as probably this year. It was tough. And then in week 7, I read 398 pages, and I finished If Only They Could Talk, yet another nonfiction, so that's 5 nonfiction. And I also finished Smoke Bitten by Patricia Briggs. So those are where we landed. The other thing, and if you're counting the total for all of the pages for the 5 of the Currently Reading, ended up being 3,554 pages. So I exceeded my goal within the goal, which was it was 375 a week to a total of 3,000 over 8 weeks, and I hit 3,500. So yay for that. In addition to that, every once in a while, I did continue to read a title that was on my Currently Reading, or just picked a title to read on my Currently Reading. So, and sometimes that was to finish something like Blood Magic. I did that week. And then If Only They Could Talk, sometimes I often read that just a little bit because I enjoyed it. So for all of those titles, I did end up reading an additional 462 pages. So my total for the 8 weeks from both categories ended up being 4,016 pages. So I overexceeded my goal by over 1,000 pages, just a little over 1,000 pages, but over 1,000 pages. Like, my goodness gracious, I am just so thrilled about that. Overall, throughout the challenge, I read 13 titles. I also read 13 Edgar Allan Poe stories. So I didn't finish this collection, but I did read 13 of the stories. I also drew out 15 alphabets from Outline Alphabets, which was a lot of work, but it was also really good to do that. I was really happy that one came up. And overall, I made tons of progress on a lot of the different titles. I'm thrilled with the results. I just really, really am thrilled with the results. I started out with, I don't have access to my Excel files right now, so that's like a whole other thing. But I think I started out around my currently reading was in the 30s, but because there were some exceptions to the rule of like what went in the jars, I started it with I finished 13, and what's left in the jars is 15, and I added one. I think I added one. So 15 less 1 plus 13 is 28. That sounds right. So I think I went from 28, I finished 13, I added 1, so there's 15 left. There are 22 titles on my currently reading at this moment. That's because there are some exceptions, and there are some new things that I started that I will finish within the next little while. So, but generally speaking, if you look at it, I read 15, and I read 13, and there's 15 left. So I reduced it by half in terms of the titles around, and I can't believe I have to say this, but I don't have the number that I was working with in terms of how many pages were outstanding, but I think it was around 1,100. And so if I read 4,000, that would bring that down to 7,000. But I think there was somewhere else where I have a page with numbers on it. I don't know where it went, but I thought when I looked at what was left, I think what was left was about 1, 2, where did I write that? Oh, it's going to bug me. Where did it go? No, I don't have it. I think it was, okay, so don't quote me on that. It was 650 pages of nonfiction, and I think 3,500 of fiction, which is 4,100 or something, which brings it to about half. So maybe I was at about 8,000. I'm not sure. So sorry, I don't have the exact numbers on that. So we're just going to move on because I can't reflect on that because who knows where that paper went. So anyway, so overall, I would say I am actually really happy with how things went. I definitely had weeks that were better than others. One of the things that works with picking a new TBR every week is that even if I had a really challenging week, I knew I only had to stick with it for a week. I did think one of the good things that I did was to switch to more nonfiction than fiction in Nonfiction November. I just did that to like embrace Nonfiction November, but if I do a challenge like this next year, and I probably will do a couple rounds of this next year, no promises, but it's likely, I think I would alternate weeks of 3 to 2 and 2 to 3. Reading 5 at a time really does work for me. I don't know why, but it really does. 4 is probably makes more sense, but because I have some that are really, really slow, having one slow read and then like 4 that are faster, and I like having options. Clearly, I like having options, so that really makes a difference as well, and so I'm really happy that I decided to do that for Nonfiction November. I think in the future I would be more than happy to go 2 to 3, 3 to 2, and just alternate whenever, provided I have enough. I ended up getting down to, at the end of it, I think I only have 4 nonfiction on the list. So that's actually really great. Whereas I think I have, the rest. The rest. So that I think it's 11 fiction. So I initially just picked them to sort of give myself a similar ratio into what I picked into what was left over. That's why I did it, not because I wanted to read X amount of fiction to nonfiction. It was just a comparable ratio, the picks versus what was outstanding. So yeah, so that's how the numbers went. In terms of like things that I learned and ahas throughout, I've shared a lot of these through my wrap-ups, but I thought I did notice a couple of things a bit more like at the end of things that I thought I would share. One of which was that generally speaking, if I had a romance, I could finish it within a week. This was often because I was halfway through or partway through the book, and I had sort of like 150-ish pages left. So those ended up being pretty successful. Blood Magic, again, was the exception to that rule. I think I just read Nora Roberts more slowly. Also, if a book came up 3 times, I definitely wanted to finish it, as was the case with The Beach, and became the trend. Once something came up a 3rd time, I wanted to be done. I don't know whether it's good or bad to do that, but I kind of felt like at this point, okay, I've had several opportunities, let's get this done. So sometimes focusing on finishing is not always a good idea, but it did work. So, at some point, I don't know, like at some point maybe you do have to commit. I don't know. Anyway, one of the other things that I did realize though for me is that 8 weeks is too long for a challenge like this. At that point, I'm actually really starting to shift my habits and feel like this is the new way. Like, so for now, like the week after the challenge, it's kind of like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do my reading? What do I do? I don't know. It became the new normal. So that is something to consider. I mostly did it because I didn't want to give myself the opportunity to start new things towards the end of the year. And I wanted to encourage myself to continue on my currently reading and to do something that was easy. And this was already set up and it was easy to do. Once the video was done, I knew what I was reading for the week. So although I don't think it's you know, it's half of one, half a dozen of one, six of the other, right? You know what I mean? So I don't, it was the choice that I made and I learned from it. And I don't feel like there's any habits I can unbreak or anything like that. But I also just got a little like or I think maybe week 5 or week 6, I was just kind of like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Not really, but I just think it's too long for a challenge for me. I know that a month is actually even in and of itself quite long. So that should be the maximum for like a really focused thing. And maybe even 3 weeks is better. And then in terms of some challenges, I said this already, but the tough weeks were really tough. Like I had some ones with really, really slow reads or just content I wasn't as interested in. And I just felt a bit stuck in a rut and I just stuck with it. And knowing it was only a week does help, but it still didn't mean that week wasn't tough. One of the challenges I did come across was often I have had buddy reads throughout this, and that sometimes, especially if I was buddy reading 2 titles at the same time, that was a lot of demands on my reading time, and so that threw me off a little bit sometimes, but I would prioritize buddy reading because I am committing to doing something with someone else, and so I don't want to and so that I realized that I shifted my priorities to do that. I was usually able, like I think there was only 2 weeks out of all this I didn't hit the number that I was going for, but it made me realize that it takes this, it's not, you know what I mean? Like when you're doing that, it's like you're adding another book, right? So maybe if I'm buddy reading, it would be smarter to take 4 books from my currently reading instead of 5, and if I'm buddy reading 2 books at the same time, maybe I only pick 1. I actually think I did that in the dress rehearsal week. I already knew that was a better way to go. Oh well. Anyway, it's okay, and it's all learning, and it makes sense, right? If you're adding more things to read, it will either take more of an investment or something's going to fall off. So that's what happened. And then also, I really hope I didn't scare myself off starting new works. Like I am going to try and persist on not starting anything I can't finish by the end of the year, but with so much focus on what I'm currently reading and keeping such an eye on it, I don't want to feel like I can't start something new if I want to. I won't get to 0 by the end of the year. I don't usually have that as a goal, but I think I would like to get to 16, although 18 might be more realistic, but 16 is the number that I have in mind to getting to by the end of the year. We'll see if that happens. In terms of surprises, I am shocked that there are some titles that never came up in either round. And I did a video for everything that's left. I don't know if this is going up or that is going up first, so if that's already been released, I will leave a link up above. But yeah, there were some, and it wasn't just one, there were several titles that never came up. Like, how is that possible? I guess that's the random draw of things, is sometimes it never came up. So that was really surprising. And I was also a little surprised that I read on the sly a little bit. I would sometimes pick something that was not my currently reading that wasn't one of the 5, and I was like, I just want to read this. Like, I felt like I was kind of cheating, but I wasn't, because it was still counts and stuff. So that was really funny, but it was funny in a lighthearted way. I didn't really feel like I was doing something wrong or anything like that. This is all to encourage me to finish the books I'm already in the middle of. So whether or not it's these ones or those ones doesn't make too much of a difference. So I did write out some commitments to myself going forward. Some of these I've mentioned in other videos, and some of them I may have not. One, and this is looking at what ended up sticking on my currently reading generally. Obviously, that's what I'm talking about here, but also how I finish stuff and, these kinds of things. One, generally speaking, Seasonal reading, no, just no. I just don't do it. I don't look forward to it. It's something I literally do because of FOMO, because everyone's talking about it and I want to take part, so I'm going to join in, but it doesn't mean anything to me. It really doesn't. And I can enjoy a book about Halloween in February, a book about any of the holidays or any of the seasons at any time of year. I don't read like beach reads in the summer. Like it doesn't resonate with me at all. But it does come up as a barrier because if I don't finish it by the time the season is done, I don't want to go back to it. So if I read something spooky in October and I don't finish it, I just have resentment for the book and myself if on November 1st I'm not done. Same with holiday romances. Reading them out of season, sure, I don't have any problem with that. If it's January 1st and I haven't finished it, it's got to be a no. So I'm going to, for 2022, try to not do any seasonal reading, or maybe forever. We'll see. I also think in 2022 I'm going to try and shy away from read-alongs. Several of the books that I read were for read-alongs or for book clubs, and I couldn't. Same thing. If I didn't finish it in the time in which it was the period that you were supposed to read it in, it just felt like a fail. And I don't want the book, especially a book I'm enjoying, to feel like a fail. Now, I could try and redo my thinking for that piece, but to be honest, getting that kind of timed reading and pressured reading in, it wasn't helpful. It just left me feeling like I missed the mark, and I would rather just not do that. So I think for next year, I'm going to shy away from read-alongs, and just let that be the truth of it. Unless it's something like super short, like a graphic novel or whatever. But any book over 300 pages, no, not doing it. It's just, especially if it's over 400 or 500 or more, like, no, not doing it. I'm also going to be really strategic about readathons, and make sure that I pick things that I can read within the readathon time frame, or even read books I'm currently reading for whatever purpose within a readathon, because I did find that I had some carryover, again, sometimes even seasonal readathons, where I read, or whatever readathons, and I read it and I started it, didn't finish it by the end of the readathon, and then I just went on to other things. So don't think that is a good way to go. So generally speaking, though, I feel like this method really worked for me. I ended up getting a lot of books read. I ended up solving a fair amount of issues that I had. I can't even think of anything right now. I don't know. Did I have issues? Did I have issues? But one of the great things about, and I can't think of an example right now, but like one of the things that happens when I was picking multiples, is, sometimes if there's some reason you're hesitating about a book that you're currently reading, I'll speak in the person. If I'm hesitating about a book and it's on my currently reading, often I would just skip it. When I was making my weekly reading plan, I would just skip it. I'm like, I don't know how to deal with that. And you just skip it forever. And then when it comes up in this situation, it's not the only book that I'm dealing with. And two, it gives me an opportunity to actually, like, I don't like to use the term force myself, but to really look at, like, what's going on here? Like, why do I have an issue with this? Like, okay, progressive love. There was one short story early on that I didn't enjoy very much, and it made me hesitant about reading Alice Munro, because in terms of the fact I didn't want to not enjoy her work, because I've enjoyed her work in the past. So that was the hesitancy, and it felt a little outdated, and there were some titles there that had some outdated language and stuff like this, but that's from 1986. That's going to be the truth for a lot of works from 1986. So there did end up being titles or works in here that I really, really loved. So I had been resisting it. Also, it was Canadian fiction, which always takes me longer. But for some reason, I think it's because this has a rather large font, and it's like almost bolded. For some reason, this one I read a bit faster, and I was able to know that, I did timed reading to figure out how long it would take, and I was even short story collections, I don't pick them up very much. Any collections, I don't pick them up very much. I don't quite know why that is yet, so that part I haven't figured out, but it allowed me the opportunity to try and solve a problem. And in the end, do I end up realizing that I like Alice Munro? Yes, I still do. Even though she had there are some titles in there that I didn't enjoy as much as others, there were still lots that I did enjoy. So it allowed the opportunity to work through some problems like that, and often that helped when it was not the only thing that I was reading. If I had other titles that I was just like, ooh, I'm excited about this, great, I'll read that for 20 minutes. minutes. And then after that, I'll try and read a title that I'm having a challenge with and work through it. So that ended up working out really well. What was the other thing that I was going to mention? So yeah, that it helped me get through books that I got stymied on. I use the word stymied on. But also, oh, this is true though, for that to be the case, for that to be successful in terms of like any TBR jar or random pull, I still had to genuinely want to read the book. So I try and be very careful with my currently reading and only keep things on it that I genuinely want to read. So this is something I did. It's also one of the Governor General Literary Award winner, which is a list that I'm working through. I don't know if we'll ever finish that list. But so I genuinely did want to read it. So it doesn't work so much if the title is something that you don't really want to read, because then it's not worth the work to get through the problem. So there we go. I felt like I had something more interesting for like the end of this, but I don't. Oh well. And I wish I had that math. Where did that math go? Oh, just maybe it's there. Is it? I think it's on the top of this piece of paper. Yes, okay, so nonfiction that is remaining is 650 pages, and fiction is 4,500 estimate. So the pages left to read are 5,150, and I read 4,016. So I read, wow, that's not great math to put together. 40%? Does that work? Can we go with that? I read almost half. I read almost half of the pages outstanding. I really thought it was at 11,000 outstanding. So, but I don't know. That number is somewhere in Excel, somewhere. It's a whole other story. I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, I am actually really thrilled with how things went. It is a bit weird. It is a bit weird when something like this comes to a close. Like, I really celebrate the fact that I read so many pages, that I stuck with it, that I finished 13 titles and 13 Edgar Allan Poe stories, and I did 15 alphabets. All of that is just really, really wonderful. And I really do want to stick with not starting new things that aren't, as always, I have a couple of exceptions, but anything that I don't want to get too, the thing is, for the rest of the year, whatever I read is whatever I read. If I don't read it all for the rest of the year, that's fine. I give myself December off. I can do whatever I want. I just don't want to, like not reap the benefit of all of this work. That's what I don't want. Anyway, in terms of other stuff, I do have some other videos out. I don't know what order things are coming out in. I am going to share what was remaining in the jars, and I also am going to share what my TBR idea is for 2022, and I do hope to pre-film my first TBR for 2022. I do take December off, and generally speaking, all of January and some of February. I will be around, mostly on Instagram is where I am most active, so I will be there, and of course Goodreads. I always update my Goodreads, and but I won't be probably doing videos, many videos outside the ones that I mentioned. I don't think I'll do any outside the ones that I mentioned. I had hoped to do a couple other ones, but the end of the year came early, in a weird way, not to get into things, but so I just need to be careful with energy management, and so for me that means not doing as many videos, and so that is what I'm going to do, because that's what I need to do. Thank you to everyone who came along for the journey. It was quite the journey, and I am really, really happy with the results, and hopefully next year I can finish off the remaining 15 titles. That is my goal. One of my goals for 2022 is to finish everything else off. Some will need a strategy, some will just need a week and some attention. So we'll see. There's always variety. There's always variety. Sometimes I wish I was a little more single-minded. That would make life a little bit easier, but that's okay. This is all like a way to set goals and work towards them, and I feel like things went well and I'm happy with the results. So I hope it was fun to come along for the ride, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the videos for the rest of the year, and have a happy and safe new year ahead and all of that goodness. I think that's the first time I've said that. Wow. Yeah, it's happening. It's the year that, where did time go this year? I don't know what happened this year. this fall just flew by. So anyway, okay, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video. Take care.